All right, good evening. It's 6:14, and I will call the September 8th, 2021 Lawrence Alliance for Education meeting to order. First thing is I please that you ask you please rise for the Pledge of Allegiance. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Before we start as well, I would just ask for a moment of silence for Yohani Rosario. So if we could just have a moment of silence, please. Thank you very much. First item will be the public comment, but just want to say it's good to be back in person with my colleagues, with all of you. You know, I know we're not completely out of the woods with the pandemic, but, you know, just appreciate the fact that we can be here in person today. The second thing I'd like to announce is, and just to welcome publicly Maria Moeller, who's joined our board. So really excited to have you, Maria, and you reply, yeah, that's right. Just really excited for the perspective and the experience that you bring to the board, so welcome. We will get now to public comments. So the first one is Mr. Mali.
53 Chester Street. Good evening, honorable members. In this era of the global pandemic, we the citizens are united in support of Honorable Superintendent Cynthia Parris to overcome all the adversity as the result of pandemic. Honorable Superintendent Cynthia Parris, one of the best superintendents in the history of Lawrence, has done excellent job to continue education of our children during these dark times. Million thanks to our teachers and their union for continued education of our children. Honorable Superintendent Cynthia Parris continued the excellent policy to improve parent and the community involvement. And her important policy, 100 days listening to our community and families. We are proud to let you know Lawrence Public School on the way to become the best public school in the nation. As the great Horace Mann said, education indeed the most powerful equalizer to overcome all the barrier, cultural barrier, economic barrier, language barrier. By bringing the 21st century education for our children, we are united as a one city is strong. We are ready to overcome the adversity as a result of pandemic. Everyone must know Lawrence will rise up from the ashes of this pandemic with one goal, to have the best education for our children. The great leaders such as Nelson Mandela said, education indeed the most powerful weapon to change the world. We are ready to change the future of our children. Lawrence always is strong. Lawrence always unites. Thank you.
Thank you. Next up we have Danny Suriel.
Good evening. My name is Danny Suriel. I am a son of Lawrence, a son of former LPS teachers, and a former LPS administrator. I worked at Up Academy Leonard for 8 years and had the privilege of serving my community in a way that I felt was excellent and up to the standard that our students need and our families deserve. And I just wanted to briefly share from my experience as somebody who was in the inside, that there are a lot of things that were all over the place when we started in 2013. There are a lot of things that we had to learn and that we had to figure out as the Up Academy Leonard School. But one of the most beautiful things that we had was support from a network that allowed for us to be autonomous in our decision making around what's best for our specific families. and the specific community needs, whether it be the incoming of ELL students and the needs for adjusting our systems, our policies to be addressing those things, but also like the experience of families who had perspectives and opinions and thoughts that mattered and were relevant. And I just want to share one quick, I guess, experience, and I'll wrap up. One of the things that was most impressive for me was coming in to a school that was in turnaround, level 4 school, and seeing us turn to level 5 level 1 within a couple of years in 2015. That's impressive work, and I'm proud to be part of that team, and I'm proud of the work that we've done, and I'm proud of the support that we've had both from LPS and from Up Education Network, and I can't stress that enough. I also am proud of the work that we've done around character building and around seeing our students grow and seeing seeing our students being able to build habits. And today we have some families and students that when they learned about this opportunity, wanted to come here to hopefully connect with some people and share about their experiences. But most impressively, being in Lawrence, having impact in this community, seeing suspension numbers decrease significantly while the school culture not being compromised to the point where a very minimal amount of students, I believe it was 2.5 before COVID, % of students faced a suspension, which I think is just impressive. And I wanted to share that experience and also thank you all for this opportunity. Thank you.
Thank you so much. Next, we have Cesar Gonzalez.
Should I keep the mask?
I would say yes.
Okay. So, good night, everyone. Our experience, I'm talking as a parent of 3 kids at the Up Academy Leonard. Our experience has been a great one. When we first started about 4 years ago, it was, for us, as parents, it was something that it was really new. And I have to be honest, when my oldest daughter, when she was assigned to the Leonard, I went to all instances in Lawrence Public Schools, asked them, I don't want my daughter to be in the Leonard. I don't want her because I know all the reputation that the Leonard has. Please send her over to somewhere else. Please, please, please. I was begging for people. So when I talked with one person, unfortunately I don't remember his name, when I talked with one person at LPS, he told me, hey, calm down. Do you like charter schools? Have you heard about charter schools? Would you like your daughter to be in a charter school? I said, yes, certainly. If that's going to be an alternative to whatever I'm going to have in the future, yes. And then say, well, give the Leonard Academy a chance. Give it a chance because they're going to use a similar model, and your daughters, they're going to do fine. And if that doesn't work, then we are going to talk. Then we can talk, and if that doesn't work, and if you don't feel comfortable, we can help you to transfer. So yes, we took a chance. We gave my daughter 1 year, and we decided not to go back. Up Academy Leonard was great, was a great experience for my daughter. It was a real different model, and well, it was really strict. What we saw over there, we think that it was very helpful for my daughters. We started talking with other parents, and many of them were in the idea that, no, I'm going to take my parents out of this school because it's like the army. They're very strict. No, poor my kid, my poor kid is going to suffer in here. No, that's not the case. The kids needed that kind of education. The kids really needed that kind of support and guidance. So for us, it has been a great experience. Over the years, we've been noticing changes in the school. Some of them we don't agree with them, some of them we understand them, but overall, the model, the programs, the teachers, the faculty, and all the people working up, they've been really, really great people. We consider them as family, honestly. So when I heard about the changes that are coming, it was really disappointing for me. I still have one daughter. She's in 8th grade. I'm concerned that this kind of changes is going to affect her. And I don't want that to happen. That's what I decided. I have to come here and I have to share with you, with all of you, my experience as a parent. And here I am.
Thank you very much. Appreciate
you.
it. The final person is Alejandra Uribe.
Bueno, yo hablaré en español, mi inglés no es muy bueno. Solamente quiero decir, aparte de lo que mi esposo les dio a conocer, estoy muy orgullosa de que mis hijas hayan salido de la UP Academy Leonard, ya que las han enseñado a valerse por sí mismas, a buscar sus horizontes. Ellas, cuando salió mi primera hija, la orientaron a seguir en adelante un programa de la YMCA para conseguir becas en la Central Catholic. Gracias a Dios, mi hija mayor obtuvo su beca y ahorita está cursando el último año de high school. Con respecto a mi segunda hija, que es un año menor que la grande, ahorita ella también está en el Central Catholic, cursando el tercer año con magníficas notas. Espero ahora, con mi tercera hija, al terminar el 8º año en la UP Academy, pueda tener las mismas oportunidades que mis hijas mayores tuvieron y han tenido hasta ahora. Estoy aquí no tanto por mis hijas, puesto ya que cursa el último año en la UP Academy, sino estoy por todos los alumnos que vienen detrás de ellas. Quisiera que siguiera el mismo programa, o mejor, es que está enfocado en la educación y principalmente en que los niños no se queden solamente con middle school o high school, que sigan adelante buscando una carrera ya sea universitaria o si en su familia no podrían costearla, que tengan una educación para poder tener un buen oficio, para que sean responsables en la vida que ellos deseen tener. Eso es todo. Gracias.
Muchas gracias. Sorry, I can't, my glasses are far. I don't know, keep them on. I'm going to take them off for now. But, okay, we have a lot of really exciting and important items. So my job will be to make sure that we, as a board, are able to ask the questions we want to ask, and but also there's a lot of important information. So I'm going to try to keep us moving as well through the items. So Superintendent, most of these items are yours. So I'm going to turn it over to you.
Great, thank you so much. So we'll start with a back-to-school update. And first, I'll start with this morning's event. You may have heard that this morning we hosted a ceremony for 2 Medal of Honor recipients, a veteran from Vietnam and another one from Afghanistan. Both were at our high school this morning, the audience with our high schoolers. And for starters, they landed on a Black Hawk. We actually still have one of the Black Hawks on our field. There were some technical difficulties. It's quite of an impressive machine, if you would. And the students were quite engaged in asking questions of the veterans. One of them is the Vietnam veteran whose story is told in the story of Forrest Gump. I think you all know that story. And he was quite engaging as a speaker. So we were chosen, and of course, very timely, as we were also honoring and thinking quite a bit about Sergeant Rosario. Last week, we opened up schools, and it was a half day. And it was a wonderful day. It was great to see students back and teachers in their rooms. Teachers and staff had done an incredible job preparing for our students and families weeks and weeks in advance, and it showed. It really, really showed. Of course, I had the opportunity to visit some schools since, and I'll share two quick stories, one from a preschooler and one from middle school. In one of my preschool visits, I had the opportunity, made a new friend. I think I told you, some of you, this story. And they were dancing to the Bear song, and I joined, and my new friend said, "Would you like to come over and play later?" I said, "Yes, of course. I want to go for a play date." And she also invited me for a sleepover. I said I would bring popcorn. I commented on her little earrings. She had these unicorn earrings. I said, "I love your earrings." She said, "Yes, I bought them new for today." And then she said, "Well, I like yours. They're a circle. They're a circle." She's 3. And then, she's 5. These are the kindergartners. And then for the middle schoolers, you can imagine, I had lunch with middle schoolers, and one grievance that they've already shared with me is that there was no butter with the corn on the cob. I told them that I would circle back with them pretty soon. I agree, we should have butter with corn on the cob. And then why can't we have regular French fries? Why do we have sweet potato fries? So this is what's on the mind of our middle schoolers right now, and I can go on with stories. I'll continue by sharing some updates also of the summer programming that when we last saw you, we were still in the mix of summer programming. So the numbers, we served over 2,300 students in our summer programming, of which nearly 300 were extended school year, our students with special learning needs. And that program was quite robust, and you all know this, we also paired with our partners to do some enrichment activities. I'll give you also a highlights of attendance. So first day of school attendance. And I'll start with some context here. We had 84% of our students in attendance last Wednesday. And as a reminder, it was a half day, so we're gonna explore if a half day is better or worse, how do we do that moving forward? For context's sake, last year during the pandemic, when it was remote, we had 81% attendance on the first day. And prior year, which was 1920, we had 90% attendance on the first day. So 84, 81, 90, just to give you a little bit of the context. And then you probably seen this in the news. We are having quite a bit of challenges with transportation right now due to the bus driver shortages. It has been, to say the least, quite frustrating. Odani's, the transportation department, Mary, everyone has been working on various alternatives. We still have 148 students who are not currently on routes. And fingers crossed that every day we have a new driver that is going through the CDL licensing programming to get certified and get them on the routes. It's quite the task right now. We've had, staff members working around the clock this week and rerouting to try to accommodate as many. We run 3 runs right now, which is really excessive to have 3 runs to be able to get all students. And finally, some highlights about teaching and learning. Some of the focuses with the principals this year is going to be on coaching, and this is to support our teachers and to make them better at their craft that they do pretty well, but we all can use a good coach and support. They're great cheerleaders, and sometimes we need that, but we also need some coaching, someone who points out our blind spots and helps us get better. We're going to continue our anti-racist work. We have engaged with the provider, Black Print, who is going to commence our audit, our equity audit, so we will report back to you all with that. And that includes a comprehensive audit of the entire district, all of our schools and practices, to ensure that we are on track to be an anti-racist district. And then also, I think we spoke to you all about DataWise, which is one of the frameworks that we use in order for our school leaders and school teams to do cycles of inquiries. It's really important that when teachers get summative data, but more importantly, formative data, that they're able to do some good planning with that data. So as of now, we have 21 of our schools who have gone through that training, and we have 6 more to go, and they're going to be doing that later this winter, so we'll update you all on that. Okay, I'll pause here for questions that you may have about reopening.
And I will say what's different from how we've been hosting meetings remotely is that we did roll call or, and, votes, and also like I went in order, just raise your hand and then we can just, see who has questions. Jess, go ahead.
I did have a question about the transportation issue, because some parents have contacted us about this, and I imagine, I think when you're not on the inside of dealing with all of the logistics, you might not understand all of the factors in play. So I know I've been telling people, because I know like the MVRTA is looking for drivers, everyone's looking for drivers right now. There's a regional bus driver shortage at least. But some folks have raised the possibility of could we contract with private like van services or other providers, and I imagine there might be some issues with that, but it would be helpful, I think, if you could kind of lay out what some of those challenges are in terms of things that folks might think of as alternate, like why, like private van services or taxis or other, things that, people are desperate and they want to get their kids to school,
For sure, great alternatives. Yeah. In fact, we just talked about that again today. So a few challenges with being able to contract privately. It's a procurement challenge. As you can imagine, we have to contract via the city process. Okay. In addition to hiring someone privately, you have to sorry them. They have to go to very specific training. We would not put children on buses with people we do not know that are vetted through an entire process. And that's weeks of that as well. And then, the contracting, which has to go through the city side, because as a reminder, the contract that the bus holds belongs to the city. So that's the other tricky part of this. But we thought about that. We thought about like everything, even including Ubering people, including Ubering our families. Yeah.
Right.
Yeah.
On that same line, Superintendent, what if parents were the ones to contract, let's say taxis or whatever, would there be a possibility of the school reimbursing the parents for that? And so the school would not be liable because it would be the parents choosing the person or the company that is going to bring their children to school and picking them up.
Yep, we also had that conversation today, and I'll check in with Maciel. So as an example, if you're the family who wants to contract the van, it's costing you, let's say, $100 a day or a week, whatever, then I have to make you a vendor so that I can reimburse you. So that's the other piece of this. And making you a vendor, again, it's a procurement process to make you a vendor, but I'm willing to explore that because I think that's another great idea versus us trying to procure the private services the other way around. Right. We also thought about what if our current bus folks become the vendor through the other, like we were also exploring that, but again, it's a procurement challenge. But yes, we're going to explore that as well.
Thank you. I think that might help in the interim until we have the drivers that we need, probably, if we present that to the parents. So just an idea.
Do we have like a particular training program that we have a relationship with around the CDL training, or is it like how are we getting more drivers basically and getting them trained?
Sure. So NRT currently has drivers in the pipeline for the CDL licensing. It's a 5-week program, which also includes, background checks and then final certifications. In fact, DESI is working with the vendors on this to see if we can, whatever. The background check can be problematic for some of our folks who want to become drivers for various reasons, and so they're working very closely with Jesse on this as well.
Okay. And then just one more question is there a possibility, like if a family's in a situation where they don't have transportation, they can't front the money for, like a private service or something, even if they could get reimbursed, and we don't have a route for them yet, or we're not there yet with the number of drivers, could their child do remote while they're waiting for that to get resolved?
Yeah, at this time, we don't have that option because Desi has not allowed anyone to be remotely right now. Yeah.
Okay. Is that something that we can talk about with them? I mean, I know it's not ideal, and I know that teachers, and I am 100% with them, like hated being hybrid in any way, but it just seems like there might be some students that otherwise are going to have a really, really hard time getting to school.
Yep, I agree with you. We would also have to do impact bargaining with the union on this matter, so it's both Desi and the union.
Wow. Okay.
Any other questions? Pat, go ahead.
Superintendent, how about home tutoring? When a child is hospitalized, the district provides home tutoring. Is there any way we could provide home tutoring for these children?
It's a good question. Happy to explore that.
Also, I have one other question about staffing. Do we currently have vacancies at different levels, elementary, middle, and high? And could you share those numbers with us?
Sure, so I'll have Maricel come up and share current staffing needs with respect to what we've hired and where we have openings. But the answer is yes, we still have openings.
Good evening. Just want to make sure it's on. So yes, Ms. Mariano, we do have, as of Friday, we have 58 vacancies for teaching positions.
And do you have the breakdown as far as levels?
Yes, I have. For early childhood centers, we have 4 vacancies. For K-8 schools, we have 31. And for high schools, we have 18. And 5 at the SES and SES Annex.
Now, my question is, compared to other years, how do these numbers stand?
Compared to other years, we are actually in line.
Okay.
So for 2019-2020, as of the first week of school, we had 235 hires. 2020-2021, which is last year, 148 hires. And for this school year, we have 182 hires thus far.
Now, when teachers left the system outside of retirements, were there exit interviews done?
Yes, every teacher receives an exit interview, and
Go ahead.
It's provided with their COBRA information and with a self-addressed stamped envelope to return to us.
Now, were there any commonalities in those exit interviews as to why teachers left the district?
There were, I can pull that. Off the top of my head right now, I did do a little bit of research. I've been working with TNTP in doing some review of the Human Resources Department in order to retain our culturally bicultural educators. And the majority is either closer distance to home, higher pay.
I think as a board, we need to start thinking about becoming a little bit more competitive with other districts as far as our teachers go. We're asking them to work extended days, longer hours, where they could go outside the district and work for less less hours and probably be paid, excuse me, a little bit more. This is something I think maybe superintendent, we should think about and become more competitive with the other districts so that we don't have, you know, a loss of teachers. I think we need to concentrate on retaining them. Thank you, Marisol.
You're welcome, Pat. I would also add that we are comparable to the area districts, except for North Andover.
Okay, thank you.
Our average salary is on par with the others. It's just our entry salary. So each collective bargaining agreement for each district negotiates their salary different. The way that ours structured is tiered.
But what
Whereas
about hours, excuse me, hours worked with North Andover?
I haven't made the comparison, but our district is a high-risk, high-need district, so it does require a lot of work from all individuals in order to meet the needs of our students and families.
Okay, thank you.
You're welcome.
Marisol, I just have a quick question. So, like, what percentage of the teacher population do those 58 vacancies represent? Like, in terms of, or even break it down by the high school, like if there's 18 vacancies, how many overall teaching positions are there at the high school?
250.
Okay, so that's a little less than 10% of the, okay, all right.
Which, when I started the district 3 years ago and I was at the high school, it was the same number of hires that I experienced.
And what are the strategies we use to fill those positions or cover for those positions?
I have a
while we are-
dedicated person to cover for those positions?
To cover for those positions, yeah, and
So each principal uses their staffing as allowed in collective bargaining agreements to cover for teachers. So that would be either other teachers or paraprofessionals or deans of curriculum and instruction, assistant principals, what have you. Anyone who's licensed or could be licensed to be in front of children.
I just have one question.
Please.
Marisol, thank you. How many, what types of platforms are we using to reach out in terms of advertising for these positions?
So we've always posted in the LPS website, School Spring, and we also network with all the area colleges and universities with their career services offices, each of their graduate schools of education, and all of their undergrad dean offices. So for any students who are graduating with their BAs to be able to apply and at least start off with an emergency license as a teacher.
Right. Is there a program called Handshake that works with the colleges? Is that what
Yes.
you're using right now?
Yes,
Okay, thank you.
you're welcome.
All right, I will likely move us forward. I do have one question, Superintendent. Just as it relates to enrollment, and I know for the state, you don't have to submit the data until I think it's like October, but when do you think, one, I'm wondering if you have a sense of just what enrollment looks like. I know that was a concern of this board last year with, and if not today, like when could we expect just an overview of what enrollment looks like this year?
Yeah, absolutely. I'll have Denise jump on the mic.
Hi, good evening. So we just ran our numbers in Power School, and we are about 1,300 students right now. Last year, October 1 numbers were 12,800 and some odd, excuse me. I would project not the October meeting, because even though we call them October 1 numbers, we spend all of October getting them done. But the November meeting, we could give you a very firm, what does our year look like?
Thanks, and just to clarify, so as of right now, you're saying you have about 13,000 we have?
Yes, I said 1,300,
Yeah, yeah.
13,000, yes, indeed.
It's like, oh, no. Okay.
Phew, my bad.
And that's up, you think about a couple hundred students from where
Yes.
we were at this
Yes,
period?
yes, and, we are still enrolling. Okay.
Yeah, and I would say if it's for the November, and we're already in September, but I think the charts and the comparisons that you all provided last year were just really, really helpful. Just seeing it year to year, and, you know, and I know at least one of the questions I would expect board members have is just related to now that we're back in person, how is that affecting the numbers pre-COVID compared to last year, and sort of where we think we're going. So that'd be great. Thank you.
Yeah, absolutely, happy to.
Actually, I do want to mention something. Last year, the last table that you guys, the last table that you guys brought in, it has the arrow, so it will show the comparison to the year before related to those students transferring to the next class. And I think that format, it was very well done, so.
You can get it again. I'll be back. Thank you.
Thanks. Superintendent, I'll keep us moving.
Great, thank you. Next, we're going to have a facilities update. And CBI is with us today. You remember them from last year when we did a ventilation analysis. So this time we've asked them, per your request last spring, to come back and do an HVAC sort of large analysis. Ken Beck is with us from CBI. He is the HVAC engineer, and he will give you a summary of recommendations and findings, and then we'll take any questions.
Yeah, so I'm Ken Beck. I'm a principal at BLW Engineers. We're working with CBI, who is a consultant with us on this project. So we were asked to look at adding air conditioning or air conditioning for all your schools. You have 21 schools currently. 7 have air conditioning, 14 do not. Our study determined that it would take $36.6 million to air condition those 14 schools. In addition, from a previous study, it would take $7.2 million to replace the boilers in those 14 schools, and another $81.8 million for deferred maintenance in the 7 larger schools that already have air conditioning. That's a total of $126.2 million to completely upgrade all your HVAC systems in your 21 schools. At a 4% escalation rate, that would be $136.7 million over 5 years, or $151.5 million over 10 years.
Thanks, Ken. So, you know, a couple of things to note here, and one is we, of course, had a very unusual summer with temperatures over 90 degrees. And luckily, we were able to continue our summer programming, but not without cause of concern here. We had several warmer days in June, over 90, July, and August. What we can continue to do as a board, and the recommendation will be that we, you know, monitor the beginning of the school year to be mindful of when the school year ends. So to avoid the late June days that could potentially be incredibly hot in some of these buildings. We've been in communication with our city colleagues and have alerted them that this will continue to be a challenge, and we have requested again for them to retrofit our buildings with these HVAC systems and AC. And so we wanted to share that information with you all.
Any questions or comments from the board?
Yeah, well, how are we thinking of paying for that?
We don't have a plan. Right now, we're going to be using ESSER money as $5 million for maintenance. And as a reminder, you all approved a Chapter 70 monies for, again, capital improvement projects that were sorely needed. But that is Chapter 70 money that, right, is not being used as Chapter 70 money. So again, this is in partnership with the city to be able to begin some of this work. We hope in the next year or two, but as the report indicates, in 10 years, you know, this is going to cost a lot more money, and climate change is here.
So when you say to take care of everything, right, deferred maintenance, HVAC upgrades, boiler replacement, is $151 million over the course of 10 years,
That is correct.
right? So $15 million a year, more or less, right? It wouldn't necessarily distribute evenly, but, right? So it's not that we need to find $151 million right away. We need to find 15 million a year, more or less.
Give or take.
Right. Okay. I mean, I don't have any brilliant ideas about that, but it's good to know.
And I will say, I mean, I think I was one of the board members that asked for this information, so I think it'll be important that, now that we have it, which is great,
Yeah.
I think coming up with, and it sounds like already conversations with the city, and you know, that'll be important. But Julio, let me go to
Do
you.
we know, Superintendent, I wish Dan was here today.
Yeah.
Do we know the bond rating of the city at this point?
I don't know.
And who would be doing the financing for this? Through CBI or?
Oh, and I think the bond rating is decent at this point, but the
I
problem
believe
is
it
that
is.
we're going out, we're going out for the Oliver, and now, and the LAE is becoming before city council.
Right.
That's not
But-
been an easy
But this
conversation.
is also a time of hardship for the students. So
Yeah.
if we ask for 15 million more on top of the Chapter 70 money that we're asking for, I don't think that would be too much to ask over the next 10 years.
Well,
I mean, if we don't ask, we might not, we will never know whether we will get it or not. Maybe the city has a way of helping with the financing until we're able to come up with those funds. Just a suggestion. I would not put it aside, I would bring it up for discussion.
I think, I think that's a really great idea. I think we have some work to do with city council to get them there on that.
Pat, go ahead.
Does any of this repair work qualify for MSBA funds?
Some of the boiler work might, but I don't believe the AC would.
Okay. Thank you.
All right, thank you, Superintendent.
Great, thank you so much, Ken. Okay, next we have the MSBA project update, and we have the Oliver team up next, SMMA, Consigli, and Pink.
Can I ask a quick question? I'm sorry. It just strikes me like if a lot of folks here are here for the Oliver, I mean, for the Up Leonard contract extension, could we maybe take that out of order so that we don't have to keep them waiting all night? Is that okay?
That is fine with me. We also, I know we have our guests here from, waiting to present.
Oh, okay, I'm sorry. I
So
didn't
what-
realize
what
we had
I'm-
multiple guests, so, yeah, okay.
It's a great idea.
Sorry,
Yeah.
didn't mean to throw a red.
No, it's okay. I would say let's continue as is, and with apologies, I could have tried to change it earlier, but,
Our presentation is short. We won't take too
thank
long. Good evening, board members. Here with me tonight is the Oliver project team. I have Helen Fantini from SMMA, our architect group, who you have not met yet, but she has been very actively involved throughout this process. She'll be going over the presentation for you tonight. But also here is Deb Marai, who's our OPM. She is from Pink Answer, and she makes sure that we stay on task with this project. And also here tonight is Christy Lyons, who is the project manager from Consigli. They are our construction manager. Helen?
Thank you, Adonis. Good evening, everyone. Oh, it worked. So here is just, this is a quick, we will be brief, we promise. These are the topics we'd like to cover this evening. We have not been before you for quite some time. The last time we came before LAE was at schematic design over 9 months ago. So we wanted to tell you where we are in the process, and also to say that tonight is solely to update you on the project. We plan to come back mid-October at the October meeting to gain your vote of approval to submit design development to the MSBA. So essentially, we are finishing up the design development phase right now. That's the blue line is indicating where we are. The light blue color on the schedule is indicating design development. And it's exactly what it sounds like. We're picking up the project that was schematic and really delving into some details with it. From there, we move directly into construction documents, which is further development. It's writing the code for building the building. But, you know, that's going to take another year. And so in working with Consigli and Christie, we've come up with a plan to have some early release packages. So those will begin coming out early October, late October. That'll allow the construction to start sooner. So as early as January of 2022, you'll start to see some activity on the Oliver site, including abatement and demolition of the portion of the building that will be going away. And again, nothing has changed from schematic design. The size, shape of the building is pretty much the same. What we've been doing over the last 9 months is really working with key stakeholders, the principals, facilities, making sure that spaces are where they need to be. We've actively engaged with the 2 principals who are really learning the plans of this building, and some of that will result in some minor changes within the floor planning, but essentially nothing major is changing size and shape-wise. Also, what we've been doing as part of this phase is coordinating with Lawrence Historic Commission. We are retaining that southern portion of the historic building that faces Campagnon Commons, renovating it, retaining many of the historic aspects, repairing it. As part of that, we're also digging into the building literally. We're opening up some walls and floors and ceilings to make sure we understand what's in there as we bring it up to 21st century needs for our students, your students, and making sure we can develop a very energy efficient envelope with the existing as well as the new portion of the building. And extending outside, again, more investigations related to the site. So geotechnical borings, understanding what's in the soils, what it can support, geoenvironmental, water table. We took sound measurements to understand, how much ambient noise is on the site so that we meet code. And we've been actively working with all of the major utilities to make sure we understand what's out there and how the new building will be connected to all of the utilities. And we just wanted to give you a bit of a preview of how the building is shaping up from the exterior. So again, you can see from this 3D Southwest view, the original building towards the front, how the new addition engages with the historic southern portion. Right now, there is sort of a tiering up with the existing building, and we're retaining that to sort of soften that stepping up with the new addition. We're choosing very durable materials that we think will work well with the existing brick. And another view, this more from the northwest, looking from the Oak Street, O'Neill Park side. We feel that we're really restoring the original historic edge along Oak Street and really giving a second front door for this building that right now is really a back door onto O'Neill Park. And, again, as part of this phase, really, developing some nice digital renderings to give a real sense of what this building will look like at the end of the day. So again, this is the Oak Street side, the addition side. We've been working with city commissions and groups, and we just had all of our variances approved at the end of August and got site plan approval last week on the 1st of September. And also as part of this phase, really starting to think about the site, replacement of trees that are appropriately scaled, working with durable materials and reusing some of the granite that will be coming from the demolished portion of the Oliver building as benches, as the base course of the addition, durable, permanent materials that will serve the city well, that are also, responding to the new, but married with the old. I'll turn it over to Christy.
So in addition to providing some of the support for Helen and her team as we explored the existing conditions of the building, we're also heavy into the construction planning phase, where we'll be mobilizing on site in just 4 short months. So with that, there's a couple things that I just wanted to touch upon. We will be using the ball field at O'Neill Park for construction laydown, and that's really geared to keeping construction vehicles and traffic as much as possible off of Haverhill Street and to the back of the site. In addition to that, we are in the process of filing a petition to obstruct on Oak Street, which will be a temporary shutdown of Oak Street for a throughway to allow construction vehicles. In addition to that, there's a lot of utility work that needs to be installed in Oak Street, so that shutdown will allow us to do that work. And that really kicks off construction, that utility work relocation, moving some telephone lines underground so that we can get a crane on site and start the demolition in the back of the building. Now, all that being said, we also are in the cost estimating phase. So we're cost estimating at the moment the design development documents, and that's an important milestone for the project. I'm sure, as you're all aware, as we come up out of 2020 and the COVID impacts, the market has seen a lot of material escalation. So we're constantly and very closely monitoring what that means for the project. We're in the midst of that effort now. Some of the materials you may have heard about are wood, but most importantly, significant for the project is steel. But the good news is we're about 9 months out from purchasing structural steel. But we're going to continue to monitor those impacts both in this cost estimate and then the 2 subsequent estimates that we'll do in early 2022. That's all for us. Thank you.
Great, thank you. Any questions from board members?
It's not a question, it's just a comment. I would just recommend, like, given how discussion went at the city council last night around the LAE and the debt override, that we share, like, information and updates like this on a regular basis with all of the counselors, because that is one thing that they seem to be concerned about. And I'm sure that we might be sharing more information than they perhaps remember, speaking as a member of a public body who doesn't always remember what information I've gotten. But I just think it's useful then in talking to them to, to be able to catalog, how we're sharing that information and when we've shared it, and, making sure that we're available for questions that they might have about the process, just in case we need other approvals along the way.
Thank you, Jess. Appreciate the feedback.
All right, thank you very much. Based on my, oh, we have one more, sorry.
Yes. I promise to be brief. We also have a brief update in regards to the LAE project. Unfortunately, the members of the team, our OPM and our construction architects could not be here. They had a scheduling conflict, so you end up with me. You've seen this before. We're here. Am I not pressing the? Here, just sharing with you that on May 12th, you approved the schematic design submission of the new LAE K through 8th complex of 1,000 seats. Since then, however, the building committee has had a few updates to the technical portion of the schematic design submission. It is identical. However, we needed to address some comments from the MSBA, and this is what is reflected here. The school site plan has not changed at all since we were last here with you or over Zoom on May 12th. This is just the plan and the grade The graded area is the overpass where the staff or the parking spaces will be available for this project. Just some renderings of what our future school building will look like. And I just want to, and this is the other part, and just to share with you that a few things you heard from Christy in terms of the Oliver. The same is a little bit true with the LAE. Due to escalation and increased per the square footage reimbursement cost, funding by the MSBA, the estimated project budget increased by $1.5 million from $98 million to $100 million. The MSBA's share also increased. The MSBA Board of Directors had a meeting late June where they went over some policies, and one of those policies were their square footage reimbursement. That increased a little bit, and it's of benefit to this project. So we're very excited about that. That change then allowed the owner's share, so the city's cost of this project is a little less. It's kind of like a 60-40 split right now. 60% the MSBA is covering, or will cover, and about 40% it's the city's cost. To add to just comment, the team was before the City Council last night. What we submitted to them, it's vote language. This project has to be a DEP override, so this has to be presented to the voters. We were there last night to share with them the vote language for the ballot. Unfortunately, the City Council members could not come to an agreement, so this language was pushed to the next meeting, which is on September 23rd. However, here before you today to request a vote for the board to recommend the submission of the schematic design as I just presented to you with the updates that I just shared.
Julio, go ahead.
So moved.
Any discussion?
No discussion.
I just have a question.
Please.
Dennis, it just concerns me that this is going to be put off till the 23rd of September. It's a very short window for us to mobilize the families before the November 2nd election. There's got to be a full bench press here, or we're going to lose this LAE project.
Yeah.
I think a group needs to get together and have some really concrete plans to hit the ground running on September 24th, hoping that it gets approved by the City Council. And as another question, is there anything we can do with the City Council to, I don't want to say twist their arms, but convince them that this is an important project and they need to approve that language?
Yes, I mean, I think the conversation last night amongst themselves was a little bit of confusion as far as the vote language, and they thought it could be changed or amended in any way. They requested a little bit of more education for the voters, so the voters understood what it meant if they voted yes or what it meant if they voted no. I shared that in our limited capacity, the district is working with family engagement and others in our schools to really engage our families. So we look to the Up Leonard and also the LAE School and also the Lawler to engage their families and educate them and show off our possible new school. We've created vision boards. Our architects and OPMs printed beautiful vision boards that I have delivered to both schools. And our goal is for them to be able to share and display in their school building, share with their families when they have PTOs and any other family engagement opportunity. We are limited in terms of the school building committee, myself and Maciel and others, and also because we are school employees, we're limited for the city attorney of our involvement and advocacy that we can do. However, we hope that you, members of the LAE, along with school committee and others, can help support this project by continuing to outreach. Dave Abdul, Councilor Abdul noted, Pat, how you are very active and supportive and always calling him and reminding him that this is important for our students, for our kids. Again, they acknowledged that I think it was just a little bit of confusion around the vote language that the city was able to clarify a little bit. However, any support that you can provide, that our agencies, our partner agencies, can provide in terms of educating our voters, our community, and working with our school community to also support this project by reaching out to our families, talking to their students, to our students about what this means will be super helpful to see this project go through the finish line.
Dennis, excuse me. It seems like we have to contact the entire city, not just that LAE school population. So in my mind, I'm thinking that we need some kind of a publicity campaign ready to go on the 24th, be it lawn signs, give families lawn signs, billboards, even on the back of buses and taxi cabs. I mean, we need a group that can really push, and I don't know if we have any money to do anything like that, to purchase items, have them printed. I don't know. In my mind, I'm thinking we need to have them ready right away to go. We can't take time beyond the 24th to get things rolling. I mean, the preparation should be done now.
Correct.
In the assumption that we're going to be pushing ahead.
We are limited to what funds we could use. We are not allowed to use school funds. We've checked in with our city attorney on this to print any materials, hence why we've worked with our construction team to print, design, and deliver the vision boards along with the stands they've purchased for us. We're working with the LAE, but I'm so glad to see that our UP network is here, our learners specifically, because this is also their new school. So I'm hoping that our students that are here are seeing their new school, hopefully not for the first time, and that they can also be working, and as I know that they're working to engage our families from that sector as well. And again, it's gonna take the entire community. We're not just outreaching or working or pushing the LAE community are up as well. Up Oliver is here, they just went through this process, and we're hoping and we're sure that both principals from the UPs are connecting to share their experience and what was successful as they took the Oliver through the finish line.
Can I say, Pat, I think we have two issues, right? Like, first, we have to get the council to allow the debt override question to even go to the ballot. And that is a task for between now and the 23rd of September. And then we have to get the hearts and minds of the public behind, agreeing to the debt override.
And it's only 4 weeks.
Yes,
That's a problem. It's a very short time.
It's a very short time, and so I do think we need to figure out how members of this board can be active and vocal with both the council and in other venues to promote this. And I will say that, one of the main questions that concern the council and that I think will also concern the voters is the question of, like, how does taking on additional debt, what are the implications for taxes for people in the city? That's always the question, right? And I think one thing that could be made clearer to people is that the city is always in a cycle of taking on debt and then paying it off and taking on new debt for projects. So taking on this debt for the LAE school doesn't necessarily mean that there's going to be a monstrous increase in city debt, because we're also retiring debt, you know, over those years as we do this. And so we have room, you know, to kind of balance things out. But we do have to think of a way to, you know, address that question in a way that's easy to grasp. So, yeah.
Is there a possibility that we can draft a letter, the board can draft a letter to the city council requesting a special meeting prior to the September 23rd meeting? Just for this particular situation. And there's also a deadline in terms of when the ballots are going to be printed. Yes. So we would need to find that out to make sure that, to see if this, the language could be incorporated in the ballots. So we would need to find out what the deadline for the ballots to be printed will be. But I would highly recommend that the board, that we as a board, request a special meeting of the city council to discuss this particular project because of the timing.
Right.
With the importance that we might lose some of this funding if we don't act quickly and properly.
Yep.
Going before the council on September 23rd, we're still within the time frame. We have to be within 35 days of when the election is happening, so of November 2nd. So
well,
September 23rd.
The situation would be, Odan, is that we don't know what they're going to do on the 23rd.
Right.
So if we request a special meeting and they don't approve it, we still have another opportunity on the 23rd.
I'm wondering, just two things. One is, at some point, we'll stop the discussion and vote on the motion on hand, which is to approve the language, so I want to do that. Why don't we do that first, just the language, and then, so I'm closing discussion, and I'll do a roll call vote. So and the motion, again, is to approve the language as it appears currently there.
Right.
Jess?
Yes.
Actually, you know what? Let's do this. If you're in favor, raise your hand. All right, so we don't have to do the roll call vote. We're here. Okay, so the motion passes. So to the question of, I guess what I'm hearing is there's a strategic conversation that needs to happen with some portion of the board and then the board, which may include a special meeting with the city council and other action. And I guess what I'm wondering is if there would be folks who would be interested if we just nominated a special committee to meet, it'd have to meet like soon, like in the next 2 days or 3 days, to help us craft a strategy, which may include a special meeting, but also probably other things as well, you know, given what we've been discussing tonight. So if that's acceptable to the council, I think I can create a committee. So I'm going to ask for volunteers who'd like to serve on that. I have 1, I have 2, and I have kind of 2.5. I'll serve on it as well. I'm happy to. And just for the board, I guess I want to preview, because of the time sensitivity, I'm just envisioning this group's going to have to meet, put together a strategy for us to consider. And if it's going to be any action, like a joint meeting that we all need to approve or something, I may need to pull this board together, even in a virtual format, if I need any approval from you all, to be able to, you know, sort of approve and execute on the strategy. So I will retain that right, if that's okay then. Okay, so I will work with Pat and Jess to come up with a strategy. I know we're going to get Julio in there too, but I'm going to, all right. Okay, thank you. Thanks for that.
Thank you.
All right, I think we good? Great. All right, so taking my my wise colleagues' advice, I'm going to move the up contract extension before the fiscal update. I didn't realize we had another item, so Superintendent, I'll turn it back over to you.
Great, yes. So tonight we're seeking an extension of the up contract for an additional 30 days. We're currently in discussions with the network about the upcoming contract. As a reminder, 2 years ago, we entered in a 2-year contract, and that expired in June. And of course, all things during this summer, we have been discussing the specifics of that contract. Things include specific measurable annual goals for both schools, Up Leonard and Up Oliver, both very different, unique, special communities, both doing amazing work. And so we've just talked about very specific things. What does it mean to continue to make progress? What does it mean to meet their goals? And then lastly, just thinking again specifically about both schools, do we do a different contract for each of the school giving their overall needs? So at this time, we're still discussing that, but we do need an extension because their June contract has expired.
Great, so just to clarify, so we're continuing to have very constructive, productive conversations with UP, but because the contract expired, we need something in place to show to the city that
Correct.
there's a contract. Talks continue, I think positively and in the right direction, but we just need we don't have a final contract today, so we need something for the city to show that we have a contract.
Correct. We continue, we do this with all of our vendors, that contract expires. We just can't keep running until, it's been 2 months that they don't have a contract. So we have to at least, on paper, extend it to show the city that we're still a partner before we issue a longer contract.
Ventura, I just want to clarify that I'd like to participate in any discussion around this, and I'm supportive of the contract extension, but I am going to recuse myself from the vote because my son attends up Leonard, and I haven't consulted with the ethics or our attorney or anyone, but it feels murky to me, so I will recuse myself from the vote.
Appreciate that, thank you. I'll entertain a motion then to approve the extension amendment.
So moved.
Have a second?
Second.
Any discussion?
Just a brief question. What would happen within the next month if they're not able to fulfill their obligations as to the expectations of the superintendent?
I have full confidence that we're going to be able to, finalize final details of the contract to then execute a full contract.
Okay, thank you.
Any other discussion? All right. Hearing none, if you vote in favor, just raise your hand. All right, so no against. Okay, so that passes. Thank you. And one abstention or just recuse that, or we'll have to figure out how to record that, yeah. Okay, sounds good. Thank you. We'll move on to the fiscal update.
Great, wonderful. So next, we're going to have a fiscal update, and this is specific to the ESSER funding. We'll talk about ESSER 1, the current one, ESSER 2, and then looking ahead to ESSER 3. And Chris Heath is with us.
Good evening. Thank you for inviting me. I just wanted to, before we begin, just formally thank the board for an approval last spring. On behalf of the finance department, there was an approval for some beyond ordinary maintenance issues that we had, and I just wanted to personally thank the board for approving those costs. That was in the spring. Those were systemic needs, and just publicly thank the board for that approval. So jumping into the fun part, and this is federal grants, which everyone loves to talk about, but I first just want to introduce myself. My name is Christopher Heath. I'm the Director of Grants for the Lawrence Public Schools. It's my great pleasure to share with you our past path with ESSER grants and talk a little bit about the future. So ESSER is a threefold piece right now. We had ESSER 1, which is Fund Code 113. We have ESSER 2, which is Fund Code 115, and we're moving into ESSER 3, which will be Fund Code 119. So you'll see those numbers kind of buried within the presentation, but first just a bird's eye view of where we are with ESSER 1. So the piece with all of the ESSERs is that they are allowing spending to go back to March 20th, 2020. So we are able to apply costs that far back. What I would like to just note is that the amount that we received was $6,399,893. ESSER 1 had an element that the other two ESSERs do not, and that's proportionate share. I know that that's come up before when we talk about our entitlement funds of Title I. The framework for building ESSER and the allocation was rooted on Title I, so the formula was such that the proportionate share to our private school partners, that share was $490,207. So we manage that relationship with the private schools, managing those funds, and are in charge of their allocation through procurement with the city. Our Lawrence share was $5,909,686. So it's just important to note that not all of the 6.3 was in Lawrence's piece. One good thing to just note as well is that we are at a 91% expended rate, which is really, really good. Though we have until September of next year to do this spending. I'm just really proud of my team's work and the work of the district to be able to really pull together such a significant spend lift right now and get us to the 91%, which is great. That means that the funds came in and they went right out, which is really the goal. Important piece to also break down is that with this allocation, there's themes, and these themes will run throughout all of the ESSERs. So we build the budgets with instructional professional salaries, with stipends, with contracted services, supplies and materials, and other costs. So to help ease the numbers, we put it into percentages and percentage spent. So you can read across the way, but I did embed some of the sizable costs, which are just examples and anchors for where the costs had gone. So for the first one, we did bring on board BCBAs. That's an effort of the district, and I really believe it's helping our students and our families and our schools. So that's a cost that we folded into ESSER. The custodial overtime was also something that we were allowed to build in, and we have, because obviously through the safety efforts, we're adding a lot more cleaning. And then also we had building-based educators. We know that with the needs of buildings and the staffing and fluctuation within the staffing, each building was received a building-based educator as well. Moving on through stipends. So stipends in this particular case for ESSER 1 was professional development. And also we created an element of technical support within each school. We also included that tech support to obviously help push out all of the technology and then support the technology that the students were utilizing during the remote learning. We also increased funding for our most fragile high needs students. Obviously they needed additional support, and we were happy to be able to fold that into this grant as well. Our smallest share was under contracted services under ESSER 1. That was professional development, as it was specific to remote learning platforms and how to support our students and our teachers remote learning. Also, an important piece to talk about was an investment in social emotional learning, and that was a continuation. How can we support our students remotely and continue to build upon the good work that's going on already. So now we moved into ESSER 2, and this has a spending year, again, going back to March 20th, 2020, and spending through September 30th of 23. This allocation is $24,085,662. One important piece to note is that this does not have equitable services. So this is not something that we are sharing with the private schools. The private schools, though, don't worry, did receive additional federal funding. They are managing their own. It's under the CRRSA Act. And so I would report that they are as well receiving additional funds through ESSER. The important thing to note here is that under ESSER 2 is they created additional target areas. I'd like to say that we, of course, had all of this represented in our first ESSER, but they really created bullet points of what they wanted supported. So academics and instruction, social emotional supports, operations to address planning, coordinating, and provisions of these services, and then mental health. So there was a mandate to put at least $10,000, which was the minimum, to support mental health services and supports. You'll see within our budget, we significantly increase that because obviously our community is in need. So digging into some of the same themes, again, it was 24 million. This particular case, we spent 6% under the instructional professional staff that we continued to carry and support the BCBAs and the BBEs, as well as to support additional educational supports for our students. There was a lot of lost learning, which you've been hearing and you'll continue to hear. We call it unfinished learning, I think. It just means that our students need some extra help, and obviously we're there to help them. So in order to do that, we needed to build in some additional staffing and some additional stipends, which takes me to the next piece. You'll see the difference here is 12% in stipends. This supports professional development. We also included a school family tech support. This is an outreach for families. This came through feedback that the families were having challenges supporting their students with the technology. And so we've infused this into each building, this additional level of support for families. And again, we also added an additional layer and a continuation layer to support our most at-risk students. Under contracted services, this needle moved up to 16%. The differences here are that we really are pushing a very robust and professional development plan. This is a systemic approach. We also are investing in coaching, and we're also increasing our regional partnerships for translation services. Supplies and materials. This was probably our largest share to date. This was a big lift in order to be able to help support the students with identified curriculum needs to help our students and the schools. We also needed to invest heavily in universal screeners. That's to create a baseline data for us to understand where our students are and what we need to do to be able to get them where they need to be. SEL supports, the social emotional supports. We continue to have needs for PPE. And then also we've embedded HVAC and boilers and technology as well. So we'll talk a little bit more about that, but these were some of the lion's share elements of ESSER 2 budgets. 7% for transportation and as well for school furniture to help support the schools. And then this is a new column that was not on the first one. This is equipment. This is in support of the HVAC work, as well as significant network data improvements that we're doing systemically. And we're also including SANS, which is to store our data. So this might be a good time to stop before I jump into ESSER 3. Any questions for 1 or 2 that I might be able to help answer?
Actually, I do have a question, and it's related back to the previous presentation about the HVAC and the boilers.
Yep.
Like, how does how those two relate or intersect?
Yeah, so I am working with my colleague, Mr. Molina, when this was built, and as well as the district leadership team.
Mm-hmm.
So these were pulled from the district-wide assessment that was done under high needs, and it was identified boilers were needing repair. There's 5 schools that will be receiving boiler replacements and repairs under ESSER, as well as the HVAC system for frost.
Okay, thank you.
Yep.
So just following up on that, so then does that subtract from the total that we heard earlier? Because if we're using some ESSER funds that was an overall total, right? So if we're taking care of some of that through ESSER funds, then we actually have less to spend going forward.
So I think what Chris might share is that all of these costs are supplementing what we would already be doing. So to do this lift of a project across all boilers and all HVAC, this wouldn't meet that need entirely. It's definitely going to be complemented for other funds. So this is a supplement grant and not to supplant what we normally would need to do due to deferred maintenance and things like that. But it is an opportunity, and we really are going to capitalize on that. So, anything else?
Yeah, I guess, sorry, just to maybe ask that question again or ask for the response again. So we were presented a figure for the overall sort of maintenance needs earlier. We see some funds here for things like supporting boilers, HVAC. So what, just want to make sure I'm understanding. So what you're saying is these funds can't supplant sort of the funding that we would use for just regular maintenance, and these are additional projects, or does this actually subtract from, you know, the 9.8 or whatever the number was that we would need to like do all the boilers, for example?
It does subtract out
Okay, good,
what
great.
the total fund
Great.
would be. Yeah, and I use those terms, and I probably shouldn't have treaded on those terms because they're very precious terms, the supplant and supplement, and it is specific to entitlement funds, Title I.
Sure.
It's like the holy grail, if you will, in terms of entitled funds. And these ESSER funds do allow you to supplement and supplant.
Yep, and just on that issue specifically with the boilers, because it is, like, first of all, I really appreciate the report. It gives us a scale of the entire picture of like HVAC, air conditioning, and I don't want to misquote the number. It was, for that portion, 7.8, right, for boiler room work. And so just, you know, at some point, we don't need this now, but I guess the bottom line is that some portion of, you know, that 12% allocated of the 24 million could be used towards, or is being sort of factored into that 7.8. So we have some funding, and it probably isn't the only funding source, but it's getting to a different question though. Like here we've painted the cost of the projects. What we haven't talked about is on the other side of the equation, like what are the funding sources we currently have. And so I think that's partly, like, at least for me, where the question would be coming from. The other question I had just related to this is, so these funds could be used through 23, correct?
ESSER 2 goes through 23, and ESSER 3, which I'm about to just talk a little bit about, goes through 24.
Great. So just, I guess, to clarify, so these allocation percentages are covering this fiscal year only, or are we considering costs into FY23 as well?
No, this is definitely moving forward.
It is, okay.
Yeah, and that's probably the hardest part of my work, is to try to project, as well to use layers of grants. So we have our traditional grants that help support professional development and student services and supports, and then this additional funding, how we can kind of chip away at some of these other pieces that need to be addressed in the district. So we have Title II that will, ESSER 2, that will be continuing through this year. That's in place now. We're starting our spend down of that now.
Yep.
The 91%, so the additional 9%, is really already encumbered money. We just haven't received anything to be able to close those books out yet.
Yep.
So again, I'm really, really pleased with where we are with that spending process. And I think 91% is a great spending projection right now. We are just digging into ESSER 2.
Yep.
We worked with the city and DUSI to open up account lines, and those are actively being spent now.
Great.
Folks behind me were anxious and ready to start using those account lines, and I'm reporting that they're open now. So we're starting to use those funds now.
Great.
And it can overlap. We can spend ESSER 2 while we're spending ESSER 3.
Yep.
Yeah.
Great. Let's go to ESSER 3.
All right, so ESSER 3, let's jump into this. You'll notice the number, it's more than double what ESSER 2 was. It's $54,108,599. This will be submitted to DESI before October 4th, and the completed spending will need to happen by September 30th of 2024. So there's a couple of focus areas. Again, this just is being built now. We're doing some initial work now. It does have some resemblance of ESSER 1 and 2 in terms of spirit, but they've also included some other mandates. The purpose of ESSER 3 funds is to support the safe reopening and sustaining of safe operations. And this is also while helping to support academics, social emotional learning, mental health, as a result of what we've all gone through in the last few years. ESSER 3 funds must include a reservation of 20%, our share, that would be $10,800,000, to address learning loss through the implementation of evidence-based interventions. So this is really purposeful and designed to help support students due to the impact of their learning has had over the last 2 years. And so this is their target, just like ESSER 2 had specific targets. This is a 20% target on helping to support learning loss. In addition to that, they are allowing, which I think is wonderful, that social emotional learning as well as mental health is also a piece of learning loss. And we know our students need that as much. So it is academic, social emotional, and mental health wellness. Another piece here is that we are going to so one thing is that this also does not have equitable services to the private schools. So this is all of Lawrence Public Schools monies to spend. And another piece is that it does require funds to have in consultation with stakeholder groups. And what that means is that there'll be outreach to all of our community partner groups, students, families, local partnerships as well, and staff and principals as to what they feel would be high needs areas to use this fund in. So there'll be more information coming out. This particular group will probably be receiving the initial survey very soon. It's in the creation phase as we speak, and so I'm pretty sure Dr. Paris will have more information for that soon for this group. But that is the extra piece here to this, is that it is going to encompass a community voice, which is nice. And so I will volunteer myself to come back and report similarly to all of you. I will probably have very little to say other than ESSER 1 is closed, but ESSER 2 and ESSER 3 spending as it's going. Any questions on specifically ESSER 3? No? All right. Well, I thank you for your time, and I look forward to any other questions that you might have later. Thank you.
Thank you. This is an area, it's not a question, so it's just a comment. So, you know, I guess just to sort of frame this a little bit, you know, the last time in the U.S. where we had a significant investment, like, you know, sort of extraordinary, was Race to the Top. So we had this sort of $4.5 billion investment, right, in education. ESSER, like when you look at the three, we're about $170 billion. So the reason I say that is that, you know, this feels like a pretty significant moment in our history, just our education history, where there is just, you know, an amount of money, funding that's being provided that I think allows us really to ensure that we're thinking about our needs right now of our kids, but then thinking about, you know, sort of the priorities that we have, what we're building towards, and using this money as a way to help us get to, you know, sort of the end state that we envision. And I'm really glad this includes a robust community engagement process. And I know also with turnaround planning and the Student Opportunity Act, I mean, we've already collected a lot of information, which is great. And I would hope that these things all talk to one another, because the district and the board have invested just a lot of time in listening and collecting information. This October 4th deadline kind of like, I didn't realize it was that soon. So it's just one where I know there's a survey going out and we're going to hear from families, but I may follow up with superintendent just to think about, I mean, this is before, that deadline is before our next board meeting, and just to like think through how we keep this board engaged and, you know, sort of get their input and things like that. So again, I'm just noting that as I've already sort of put a seed that I may need to call a meeting to talk about the city council work. Just this timeline, and apologies for missing that it's coming up so soon. That may be a second item on the agenda, just to make sure that the board understands at least the process you all are using to get input, and sort of how you're weaving in what we've already learned through SOA and turnaround plan and things like that, which again are sort of informing the direction and the future of the district. And we just want to make sure that the resources are aligned to that. And I know you're doing that, but I just think it'd be helpful for the board to have a final sort of presentation. It's a lot of money. It's just kind of, you know, it's really an opportunity, and I'm glad for the opportunity, tremendously hopeful. But again, just want to preview that for the board. I'd love maybe just a quick update on the process before it's actually submitted. So I'll work with you, Superintendent, on that. So thank you so much to the team. I really appreciate it.
Thank you.
All right, and the final item on the superintendent's report is the summative evaluation report. And if I could just for a second, Superintendent, just to frame this a little bit. So we have roughly a year-long evaluation cycle. This board voted last year to make it more of a 9-10 month cycle so we could actually align it to sort of a more traditional school year sort of a period. So what the superintendent is presenting today is her self-evaluation at the end of the evaluation cycle. Just to preview, what we do is, we've read the goals, we have a chance to ask questions. What I'm going to do shortly after this meeting is then send you all the individual evaluation template, very similar to what we did last year. I would ask that you complete that, and I'll give you sort of a date by when I would need that completed. You send those to me, I then compile them, and then create one evaluation, summative evaluation that I would share with all of you for review. At our next meeting, we would discuss it and then eventually vote on it as well. So just to sort of, lay out the process, and then in November, we would kick off the goal setting and things for this academic year. So that's the process. But Superintendent, I'll turn it over to you.
Great, thank you. There is a printed copy of the summary of the self-eval for you all to follow along, if that's helpful. So I think the way I was hoping to go through this is just to give big highlights, because there's quite a bit in here, and I don't want to make a snooze button go off here. So why don't we start with the first goal, which is to cultivate a focus on student achievement. I'll touch on, again, highlights of some of the key action steps, the first one being to finalize and implement the renewed turnaround plan. Members of the turnaround subcommittee who are present here today have engaged with Great School Partnerships, and that was with the end goal of designing a process where stakeholder groups can provide feedback on the final plan. There is a plan currently drafted, and as a reminder, we chose to renew the plan. And so when that process is over, we will then come forth to the full board for a final presentation and approval of that plan. And again, highlights of that plan will include the SOA work that we have been doing, the initiatives that have proven to be good and moving things forward are all highlighted here for you all to further review. The other thing that is under this goal specific is the expansion of academic supports and social emotional supports for at-risk students. And under the leadership of Mary Toomey, the Office of Student Supports continues to make significant progress in this goal. Those highlights are all included there. Lastly, under this goal, we have also made significant progress in job-embedded professional development for our school leaders and coaches and teachers. And again, highlights of all of those professional developments are included here in this report. I'm now looking at goal number 2, which is to deepen the efforts to recruit and retain culturally responsive and highly effective teaching and professional staff. So earlier, there was a question about retention and recruitment. I think last year we spoke quite a bit about our strong desire to diversify our teaching force, specifically recruiting and retaining those who are bilingual, bicultural. I can tell you from anecdotal and both from data that HR continues to keep that we have done principals have done a fairly good job at doing that and have used the both retention and recruitment in the form of bonuses. I would say we call them just recruitment and retention, additional funding for folks who are bilingual and bicultural. That has proven to be a very successful strategy. Of course, we spoke about the Black Print audit that is going to be happening. That will also happen under the HR department, and we will continue to conduct that equity analysis to ensure that our practices are in line with that goal. And then with respect to offering high-quality professional development for those educators, you can see here that we are in partnership with Regis College, and they are offering free series on culturally responsive teaching. We do have other partners. The schools have been very committed to this goal and have done some of their own, but district-wide, what you see here is highlighted in these pages. I'm moving on to where you see on that page the Anti-Racist Committee summary. I spoke about that earlier, which was in the updates that I gave you with reopening. You see here who the members are and what, again, the multi-year goal is for this. Let's see if we can catch up. I wish I would have now numbered this so that we can all, I see now that I'm like, how are we keeping up here? Okay. So I'm on the page on the left-hand side where it says develop a culture-responsive hiring and onboarding process. So a team of LPS staff is participating in DESI's program of teacher diversification professional learning community. And that, as you see here, is to engage in monthly virtual sessions starting in October and through the end of the school year. You see here also highlighted who is participating in that group. And we will continue to offer one-time bonuses and, again, retention, as I spoke earlier, with the goal of maintaining and keeping and recruiting the staff that reflects our student body. I've moved on here to increasing the option funding and resources with partnerships with colleges. And you'll see on the right-hand side column that the parent to para education through the Lawrence Working Families continues to be a successful initiative. And each year we graduate up to 25 students and then have them take the Para-Pro test in the first semester and second. And those of you on this board who are very engaged in that, we thank you again. I love the ceremony every year, and it feels incredibly special to us, but it's a really proud moment also to be there. The new one here is the Regis College partnership, and that is in the efforts to have educational, the paras to become teachers. And they will help with the associate. So what we're doing here is a 20% off tuition, I say discount, but it's just really a 20% off to be able to complete this. But more importantly, Regis is working with us to tailor the program to our community. And then lastly, the paraprofessional to licensed educator. This is with LWFI, and you know the program as well. We have spoken to you all about this for our community. Lastly, this lists about the Lynch Leadership Academy, and this is for our school leaders. As I mentioned earlier, the focus this year is for school leaders and administrators to support teachers via the coaching model. But of course, they also need support in training themselves to become better coach. So the Lynch Leadership Academy, we currently have 3 school leaders that are in that academy. We do have former members, alumni in that program, including Melissa Spash, myself. I was an alum of this academy. I think it's an incredible opportunity for school leaders to continue to develop their leadership skills, and we will continue to work with the program and add more administrators to that program. And moving on to goal 3, which is to deepen and expand the ways in which the district engages with families and students. I can go on and highlight the many schools that do an excellent job at engaging our families, including the Leonard, who does a great job, as evidenced today by the way they mobilized families and brought them here. And then more closely, the FRC, led by Denise Snyder, continues to be very supportive of school leaders and school communities in reaching out to our families. So the Family Engagement Partnership Council, it's now in their 4th year, And this year we had the virtual celebration. I don't know who attended this, but it was so special. I was a big baby at the celebration and cried. There's a song that they use I've already forgotten. And I don't know, I was so emotional. This was also in the middle of everything, and we hadn't done this virtually, and there was a big attendance, and everybody was happy, and the little hearts were like in the, you know what I'm talking about, in the screen, so it was really special that way. Let's see here. Oh, I've moved on to, on the left-hand side column, the Administer Family Experience Questionnaire. So 2021 was when we launched the Family Experience Questionnaire, and we had over 4,000 total responses. And so we rebranded that as well so that families could actually appeal a little more to families and increase the response rate, which was feedback that we had gotten from many of our families. Let's see here if I lost my place. Oh, yes, and so to do that, we included school-based captains, survey captains. And I know that that was a way for us to, I think you guys have also given us a lot of feedback on ways to get families to do surveys. There's really, you know, sometimes we're just burnt out with surveys. I mean, as a parent, I get a lot of surveys too. You know, sometimes you ignore them, and sometimes they're crying out in your inbox, like, choose me, pick me. It's gonna take 2 minutes, it's gonna take 5 minutes. So we've tried, we'll keep trying here to get our families to engage on surveys. Stick with me here. I think we're still on the same page. This is about the Launch to Play to Learn workshops for our pre-K and K families. And so last winter, we had a grant from Eastern Bank, and the FRC collaborated with the pre-K and the kindergarten educators and developed a curriculum implementation for new Play to Learn initiatives. I actually participated in one of the pre-K welcome back sessions, and one of our members from the FRC was walking the families through that process. They were quite engaged, but more importantly, the kids were happy to be hearing what was coming up. So it's one of the ways that we can continue to really give our families skills to better navigate and understand what to expect of our schools, but more importantly, how to be part of a system that is so new to them. And sorry, there's many numbers in here that I'll let you at your leisure, of course, look at. And I'll move us on to the next page. This was, again, one of my favorites, the expansion of the ELFIS initiative. That stands for the Lawrence Family Institute for Student Success. We talked about this 2 years ago when we started this, and this is in the similar goal of giving families more skills to navigate the system. That's a very short summary of what this project is. And I invite you at some point to peek in and join us. But what happens is we give families so much the information they need to really understand what does it take to get your student from pre-K, kinder, all the way up to high school. And at what point and where and what questions should you be asking your educator, your principal, myself, you all. And it's remarkable to be in these sessions and watch families ask questions, be incredibly engaged, and many of them, you know, honestly being vulnerable with us and saying, oh, you know, I didn't know that I could ask my teacher, what's my reading level, or what's that math curriculum, or why this, why not that? Because they trust us, right? They send our students, and they trust us wholeheartedly. So it's really important that we help them navigate the system and continue to give them the skills necessary so that they can be their best advocate for their student. Still with the same goal of engaging families. So I'm moving us on to the next page, and this is about Duvos Council. Duvos Council also met virtually during the pandemic, also with strong attendance. They continue to have projects throughout. And the last time you saw them was in June when they came to you and shared with you some of the work that they had been engaged in. We're going to be meeting with them again later next week, I think that is. I don't know. Yes, thank you, next week. And we're going to check in with them. Does it make sense for us to have a hybrid model? Because we do not want to lose the amount of families who joined us, educators and kids. So we're thinking creatively, because the upside of the virtual world was that we had more families and more join us. We do not want to lose that. They had that flexibility. So one of our first meetings will be, tell us about the structure of these meetings and what we should do to keep as many families engaged. And we're happy to bring them back later in the year again. I'm a big fan of giving this group a project, a job. I call it a job. You can expect that they will continue to tackle our chronic absenteeism as one of the projects that they have been working on. And we do have some other ideas for them moving forward, but that'll be in collaboration with this group. They will decide what they want to work on, given the many projects that we have that they can engage in. And then here, we've captured, the opportunities we had to engage with families, and this is again about the virtual coffee series. I think, again, the upside of the pandemic was our ability to very quickly and in multiple occasions on the same week host virtual coffee hours and get feedback from families as to where we were falling short during the pandemic in the virtual world, what we were doing well, and getting suggestions, feedback, and listening to their concerns. We did that again before school started. Some of the things that families asked were, of course, about safety protocols, all of the COVID safety measures that we had in place. They, of course, wanted to know things like uniform. They wanted to know, what about the bus? So a lot of practical and technical questions, but then some more nuanced questions about the specific of their student and their school. I really love meeting with the families. It's an opportunity where now they have an understanding of the rhythm of those meetings. And again, because we can host them very quickly, we see more families. We also see our regulars who are part of all of those meetings. We like that too. Gives us a sense of routine in those groups. You can expect that I'm going to continue to do that. So the next series will be later in October, because we said we're going to do that before school starts, and we're going to do that right after, so that you can tell us what's on your mind now that your students are in the schools. Everything from back to uniform, back to safety, back to food, whatever you want to talk about. And we'll keep notes of the things that they share with us. This last series, when we met with them right before, all of that feedback we shared with the principals, because there was an opportunity to act on them. So the very specifics of what families shared, we took notes, shared it back with the principals, and said, here's what the families were sharing with us. And some of them you can, check in with your families. Specifically, there was one feedback that families said, we would like to meet with our teachers virtually before school starts. Like, great, we can do that now. Glad that you asked for that, because that's something very doable. So schools took action on that. And then lastly, the last goal here is maintaining effective governance model and positive and transparent communication and relationship with you all. I will continue to seek your guidance, both one-on-one and as a larger board. We will continue to offer times that hopefully you can connect with me individually or one-off. I appreciate every time you guys either text me or call me or email me with a question, a suggestion. I encourage you and urge you to continue to do that, especially if you hear something that is not quite jiving, or you're wondering about. Much better for me, for us, for the team to problem solve together before things, things don't make sense for anybody else, because that's no good for our community. And I've just noted the communication dates that we have on record for our conversations. Of course, Ventura is sick of me. We talk at least once a week, more formally, but all the time, to problem solve a lot. So I really appreciate you being a thought partner for the many, many challenges and questions that arise on a daily basis, weekly basis. They're just noted there as well.
All right, thank you. I'll open it up if there are questions, and again, just as a reminder to the board, so this is the superintendent's self-evaluation, sort of reflecting on the goals that she laid out for us for the year. So if there are any general questions around this now, this is the time, this is great. However, I will say, because you're gonna be working on these individually, I'm going to say that, you know, reaching out with a question to the superintendent or something that, you know, is appropriate. Like, again, we're not going to be deliberating online or things like that, but to the degree that it helps you as you're completing your own form, I would encourage you, if, you know, you don't have a time already, maybe setting up a time just to check in with the superintendent if you have questions and things like that, because I want to make sure that, again, we got a lot of really good information at night, but you have what you need, you know, to complete your own your evaluation of the superintendent. So with that, I'll open it though, if there are any questions, comments, anything now, you know.
I just have a comment. Thank you, Superintendent, for the information, for the summary. It looks like a lot of the questions and issues that we have brought up the past year seem to have been addressed in these goals, and I'm happy to see that. I'm happy to see that we're also looking for more ways to connect with parents, which is always the part that is important to me in terms of how we develop programs and the issues to effectively work with our students. Thank you.
Sure.
Please.
Superintendent, thank you. I appreciate this comprehensive report. It gives us enough information, I think, to work on the evaluation. So I thank you for all that.
Agreed.
I was trying to pull up my calendar, but I'm not going to try to do this. I'll send an email by tomorrow just with the dates. And again, I want to make sure you have some time to complete it, but also I want to be able to pull it together for your review. So, all right, so I think that brings us to the end of the superintendent's report. The only other item we have then on the agenda is approval of the minutes. And I think I would just maybe ask if we can take this up next meeting. I think there's going to be just a small review to make sure that, you know, we're capturing all the votes accurately. Just make sure that, you know. So I'm going to ask that we not vote on that, and then we'll bring this back up next meeting with this current meeting's minutes as well. So, so having no other business, I mean, I'll entertain a motion to adjourn.
Second.
By a raise of hand, all those in favor? All right, so the meeting is now adjourned. Thank you very much.